A Tuesday in August. The second cutting still lying in the field. And your backhoe just quit in the yard, engine fine, hydraulics fine, but a message on the screen telling you to call the dealer before it will move another inch. You paid for that machine. Every bolt. And right now, it belongs to somebody 2 counties away with a laptop you are not allowed to touch. Here is what I learned the hard way, and what almost nobody says out loud. The reason European backhoes are quietly burying Caterpillar in this country is not horsepower, and it is not price. It is that one of them still lets you fix your own iron, and the other one turned the machine you bought into a machine you rent by the repair. I lived this. I paid the invoice. I am going to walk you out of it step by step. Before we are done, I am going to hand you the name of one law, signed in 2023, that forces these companies to give you the same tools the dealer hides. It is real, it is on the books right now, and it works even if the machine sitting in your yard is already locked down tight. Stay with me, because the way out is smaller and simpler than they ever wanted you to know. Let me take you back to that August. I farm ground in central Nebraska, west of Grand Island, and I had a backhoe loader I bought used but sound. That afternoon it threw a sensor fault, not a broken part, a sensor, a $12 piece of plastic reading a value it did not like. In a sane world, I pull the code, I swap the sensor, I am back to work before supper. But that is not the world we live in anymore. The screen wanted a dealer, and the dealer wanted the machine. Now here is the first thing I want you to understand, because it is the thread that unravels the whole thing. The problem was never the sensor. The problem was that the machine could see the sensor and I could not. The diagnostic that told the computer what was wrong was locked behind a tool only the dealer is allowed to run. On the Caterpillar side, that tool is called Electronic Technician. On the green side, it is Service Advisor. Different colors, same cage. Somebody, somewhere, made a decision. They decided that the information about my own machine, generated by my own machine, sitting in my own yard, was theirs to sell back to me one visit at a time. That is not a repair policy. That is a toll booth bolted onto something I already own. And I want to be fair here, because I am not the kind of man who screams before he checks the facts. I called the dealer thinking maybe it was quick. Maybe they walked me through it. What I got instead was a service window 11 days out, a travel charge before anyone touched a wrench, and a shrug when I asked if I could just buy the code reader myself. 11 days. During hay season, on a $12 sensor. That was the moment the trust broke. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. The realization that the machine had been engineered on purpose to make me helpless at the exact moment I needed it most. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. You start looking at every screen, every warning, every dealer-only lockout differently. You start asking who profited from your trust. Because somebody did, but a broken trust is not a bill yet. Let me show you what this actually costs, because that is where the trap really tightens. Here is the math that nobody prints in the brochure. When I finally added it up, that 11-day wait did not cost me a service call. It cost me a window of weather. I lost the back half of a cutting to rain that rolled in while my machine sat dead over a part I could have installed with a socket set. And I am not special. This is the pattern everywhere. There was a report put out by the U.S. Public Interest Research Group. The folks who dug into this repair fight harder than anyone, and their work laid it out plain. When a farmer cannot fix his own equipment, the loss is almost never the part. It is the downtime. It is the hours the machine sits waiting on a dealer who is stretched across too many counties with too few technicians. Think about what a day of downtime is worth in your operation. Not the repair, the day, the window. The custom work you turned down, the neighbor you could not help. For a lot of us, that single lost day is worth more than the machine payment for the whole month. And the invoice itself is engineered too. A forced dealer visit is not one charge. It is a stack. There is the travel time, billed portal to portal. There is the shop labor rate, and I have seen those run north of $175 an hour on heavy iron. There is the diagnostic fee, which is the part that should make your blood run cold, because that is a charge for plugging in the tool they will not sell you. You are paying a premium for the privilege of not being allowed to own the thing that finds the problem. Now here is the piece that took me the longest to understand, and it is the ugliest one. On a lot of this equipment, even if you get the right part, even if you can turn the bolt, the machine will not accept the new component until a technician enters a factory password and tells the computer to trust it. On the Caterpillar engine control side, people in the repair trade have talked for years about factory passwords required to flash or reprogram a module. On the ag side, it is the same story with a different accent. So picture it. You have the part in your hand, you have the skill, you have the socket, and the machine still says no, because a string of characters you are not permitted to know is standing between you and your own work. That is not a safety feature. There is no safety reason a hay tractor needs a password to accept a sensor. That is a lock on your labor. I want to sit on that for a second, because this is where the story stops being about one bad afternoon and starts being about a system. Somebody wrote that password requirement into the software, somebody decided the owner should not have it, and somebody built an entire dealer network whose income depends on you never getting it. That is not an accident of engineering. That is a business model wearing the costume of a repair. And once I saw the model, I started asking the obvious question. If you want to go deeper on exactly how that model was built, layer by layer, and what it looks like across different machine colors and different industries, I wrote all of it out in a book called Fixed or Owned. It covers the full arc from how these lockout systems got designed into the machines in the first place to what owners are actually doing right now to break free of them. There is also a companion volume called Break the Lock that goes straight into the practical side, the diagnostic paths, the legal pressure points, the questions to ask before you sign anything. You can find both of them mentioned in the description below. If this conversation is landing for you, those books are where the real work starts. Now, back to that question I was chasing. If this is such a great way to run a company, why is one of the biggest names in yellow iron quietly walking away from an entire product line? Because they are. And that is the crack in the wall I want to take you through next. Here is something most folks in this country never heard, and it stopped me cold when I found it. Caterpillar, the giant, the name on half the equipment at every job site in America, stepped back from the backhoe loader. The classic dig and load machine, the one you picture when you hear the word backhoe, they pulled back from that market for North America. The king of yellow iron looked at the humble backhoe loader and let it go. So who filled that hole? A British company. A company that did not just build backhoe loaders but invented the modern one. Joseph Cyril Bamford started the firm back in 1945. And in 1953, he built the machine that put the loader on the front and the digger on the back and changed construction forever. Those are his initials on every one of them, JCB. And today that European outfit is the largest backhoe loader maker on the planet. They did not outshout Caterpillar. They outlasted them in the one market Cat decided was not worth the trouble. Now think about what that tells you. The American giant walked away from the machine the small operator actually needs, the do-everything digger that a one-man outfit or a small farm relies on, and a European builder picked it up and ran. And here's the part that matters for your wallet and your independence. The European and the independent-minded builders came up in a different world. They came up serving operators who were hours from a dealer, who expected to grease their own machine and pull their own codes, who would have laughed a salesman off the property if he said, "You need our laptop to change a sensor." I am not going to sit here and tell you every European machine is a saint and every American machine is a villain. That is not true, and you would not believe me if I said it, because you have been sold too many easy stories already. Telematics and lockouts are creeping into all of it, but there is a real difference in philosophy, and you can feel it the moment something breaks. One tradition treats the operator as a partner who keeps the machine alive. The other, the one I got trapped in, increasingly treats the operator as a security risk to be managed. And this is where the villain finally steps all the way into the light, so let me say it plainly. What happened to the backhoe is not really about backhoes. It is about a strategy. The strategy is to build machines that generate service revenue for the life of the iron. Machines that funnel every fault back through a dealer. Machines where the software is the leash and the dealer network holds the other end. When a product line does not fit that leash and toll model as neatly, the giant loses interest. That is why the plain, honest, fixable backhoe got orphaned by the biggest name in the business. They did not just build a machine and profit from your trust. That was phase one. Phase two was building a whole system, a network of dealers and passwords and diagnostic locks, all pointing the same direction, all pulling money out of your operation on their schedule instead of yours. And when I finally understood that it was a system and not a series of accidents, I stopped being angry and started being useful. Because a system has doors. You just have to know where they are. Now, I need to talk straight to one person watching this. Maybe that is you. Maybe you already own the locked machine. Maybe it is sitting in your shed right now with a screen you do not control, and you have been listening to me thinking, that is fine for a man shopping for something new, but I am already stuck. I already own the trap. If that is you, this next part is the reason I made this whole video. Do not go anywhere. This is built for you, because here is the truth. You are not as trapped as they need you to feel. There are moves you can make this week on iron you already own without ever handing the keys back to the dealer. The first move is the simplest, and it is the one they least want you to make. Get an independent diagnostic path. On a huge amount of equipment, the fault codes are readable through a standard port using generic tools, not just the dealer's proprietary laptop. There is a whole world of independent repair shops and aftermarket diagnostic gear that exists precisely because owners refuse to accept the lockout. You are not the first person to hit this wall. There are people who have spent years building the ladder over it. Find your independent shop before you break down, not after. Have that number in your phone the way you have your vet and your parts man. The second move is to change how you buy the part. When you know what is wrong, an aftermarket or a rebuilt component from an independent supplier can cost a fraction of the dealer-only part, and it is often the identical piece from the identical factory with a different sticker. The dealer wants you to believe only their number will do. A lot of the time that is a story, not an engineering fact. The third move is the one that costs nothing and pays the most, and it is about information. The people who beat these lockouts share what they learn. There are forums and owner groups for nearly every machine ever built, full of men who have already solved the exact fault flashing on your screen, who will tell you the workaround, the part number, the sequence for free because they were burned the same way you were. Kevin Kenny, a farmer out of Nebraska, became one of the loudest voices in this whole fight because he refused to accept that a man could not repair his own equipment. Willie Cage spent years pushing the same rock uphill. These are not lawyers. These are our kind of people, and they built a trail. Walk it. And the fourth move, the one that starts to shift real leverage, is where you spend your next dollar. Every operator who chooses a more open, more repairable machine for the next purchase sends a signal that the leash and toll model has a cost. That is exactly the pressure that let a European backhoe builder eat the giant's lunch. You are not powerless in that market. You are the market, but I promised you something bigger than workarounds. I promised you a door that these companies do not want you to know is unlocked. So let me stop circling it. Let me hand you the finale. For years, the answer to all of this was the same. The manufacturers said the software is ours, the tools are ours, the passwords are ours, and there is nothing you can do about it. And they were mostly right, because there was no law that said otherwise. They wrote the terms, and then they went a step further, which is the part that really tells you who you are dealing with. In January of 2023, on the 8th of the month, one of the biggest names in green iron signed a memorandum of understanding with the American Farm Bureau Federation, a signed agreement. Sounds like progress. Sounds like they finally agreed to let farmers fix their machines. Read the fine print and your stomach turns. That memorandum was not a law. It was a promise, and it was a promise with an escape hatch built right in, a document the company could lean on to say, look, we are being reasonable. Please do not pass any actual rules. It was a signed agreement designed in part to slow down the thing that actually scared them. And what actually scared them is what I am about to give you. Because in that same year, the farmers won something that is not a promise, it is a statute. The state of Colorado passed the Consumer Right to Repair Agricultural Equipment Act. It moved through the legislature, it was signed into law in the spring of 2023, and it took effect on the first day of January 2024. Colorado became the first state in the nation to pass a right to repair law aimed squarely at farm equipment. And here's what it actually forces the manufacturers to do. It requires them to provide owners and independent repair shops with the same diagnostic tools, the same software, the same parts, the same manuals, and the same documentation that they give their own dealers on fair and reasonable terms. The same tools, the same software. The thing they told me for years I could never have, a state law now says they must hand over. Now here is why this is the door and not just a headline. And here is why it works even for you, watching this in a state that has not passed a thing. Think it through the way I did. These companies are not going to build one special version of their diagnostic software that only works inside the Colorado state line. That is not how manufacturing works. That is not how software works. When one state forces the tools into the open, the tools are in the open. The dam does not spring a leak in one field, it cracks. And the states did not stop with Colorado. This became the template, and legislature after legislature started drafting off it, because a working law is contagious in a way a signed promise never is. So here is what you actually do this week, and this is the whole point of staying to the end. You go find the text of the Colorado Consumer Right to Repair Agricultural Equipment Act by name. You read what your manufacturer is now obligated to provide. You go to the manufacturer's own owner portal and you look for the diagnostic tools and documentation they are now, thanks to that pressure, making available, because they would rather sell it to you quietly than fight 50 state houses. And you contact the Right to Repair coalitions that push this thing across the finish line, the folks at the repair associations and the public interest groups, and you ask them the one question the dealer will never answer for you. What am I legally entitled to for my machine, and how do I request it? That is the exit. It was buried in fine print and drowned out by a signed memorandum designed to make you think the fight was already handled by somebody else. It was not handled. It was won in one state house by ordinary people who were done being told they could not fix their own iron. Farmers, mechanics, a Nebraska man who would not let it go, coalitions that spent years getting laughed out of committee rooms until one day they were not. They kept the door open. All you have to do is walk through it. And that is the whole thing. Right there. The machine in your yard was never really the problem. The lock on your own two hands was the problem, and that lock is coming off one law and one refusal at a time. Here is what I want you to carry out of this. The freedom to fix what you own was not lost in some big dramatic theft. It was taken quietly, one screen, one password, one 11-day service window at a time, while we were all too busy working to notice, and it can be taken back the exact same way, quietly, stubbornly, by a man who decides that a machine he paid for in full is going to answer to him. That is who you are. You are not a renter. You did not buy a subscription with wheels. You bought iron, and iron is supposed to outlive the man who owns it and get passed down still running. The kind of owner who watches a video like this all the way to the end is the kind of owner who was never going to hand the keys to a stranger with a laptop. You are the reason the European builders got a foothold. You are the reason Colorado passed a law. You are the pressure. Do not ever let them talk you out of that. So tell me one thing, and I mean actually tell me down in the comments, because I read them and this is where our side compares notes. What was your worst forced dealer invoice? And what was the repair that caused it? Name the machine. Name the color. Tell me the dollar figure that made you sit down, and tell me where you are watching from, because I want to see this fight county by county. That $12 sensor that cost me a cutting of hay still gets under my skin, and I guarantee you have one that is worse. And if you are done renting what you already bought, come stand with the rest of us. Subscribing here is not about me. It is about building a wall of owners big enough that these companies cannot pretend we are a handful of cranks anymore. Next time, I am going to lay out exactly which telematics systems on today's machines are quietly phoning home about your location and your hours, and how to find out what your own iron is reporting behind your back. You are going to want to know that before your next purchase. Bring your neighbor. This only works if there are enough of us to be heard, and there are more of us than they ever count. I lived that August, and here I walked you through it. But the deeper version, the right to repair playbook, machine by machine, that's waiting inside my membership, the circle, that's where you can ask me your own question and I answer you myself, not some bot. And you won't be alone. Folks like you are already in there with me. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel any time with one click. If you enjoyed this, do subscribe and stay with me. I have more videos right here that dig into machines like these, and I would love to keep exploring them with you.